If I want to look up the annual median wage for a particular job code, I could. And so in one of these cells, I'm just going to type in the occupational code. And then I'll auto-fit that column to that cell by hitting Alt-H-O-I. And then we said we wanted to find the annual median salary. And so in this cell, we could use a VLOOKUP function. So anytime we want to begin a formula or a function, we have to type in equals. And we'll see that VLOOKUP is going to look for a value in the leftmost column of the table, and that will be an important detail whenever we set up our data. So the value I'm going to look up is the cell from right above. The table array is going to be the set of data that I want it to look in. And in this case, I want to look up based on the occupational code. And so I need to begin this with cell H2. I'm going to hold down Control-Shift down arrow and Control-Shift right. And that gives us the table array, or the table that we're going to look up for our VLOOKUP function. And the column index number is the column that you want to recall the data from. So in this case, I'll simply have to count over the number of columns. And it looks like it's the 19th column in this table array. And so I'll type in 19 here. The range lookup is optional. I will leave it off at this moment. I will close this formula and function, then hit enter. And of course, it's going to give us an error because we haven't chosen an occupational code. And so if I wanted to choose an occupational code, I could simply type one in here. And what happened is that in this VLOOKUP function, it went to cell H2 and pulled from the data from this table to find an annual median salary of $59,490. And so if I wanted to change the data for a loan officer, I could choose 13-2072. And what should happen is it should update the annual median salary for that position. Here it's reporting an annual median salary of $53,780, and we can check to make sure that that's the case. And there we have it for a loan officer. And at this point that may be helpful, but maybe a better way to do this is to use data validation for this occupational code. And so before, you'll remember that on the VLOOKUP function, I left this last component off, the range lookup off. And let's look what happens if I were to get a number close to that, right? So for example, if we decided that a user was going to be able to type these in, we could say 13-2073, which is not in the table, and it still gives us that value. And what happened is that if we go back and we look at the function for VLOOKUP, this range lookup will tell us that if we want a true, which is an approximate match, and that's what it will automatically default to if left blank, or false for an exact match. And so I'm going to type false here to make sure that it gives us an exact match. And now with that same code, we see that there is no match. It gives us an error. If we were to go back in and type in a correct one, we should be able to find a value in this data table. So perhaps instead of letting the user type in those values, maybe we want a way for them to pick only from a drop-down menu. And so what we can do is use our data validation feature in Excel. And I'm going to go to the Data tab. And you'll see that there are different options here. In this particular one that has boxes with a check mark sign next to it, you'll see that it says Data Validation. So I'm going to select that option by hitting V. And I want to use V for data validation. And right now we see that the validation criteria says it will allow any value. What I'm going to do is change that. I'm going to change it to a list, and it wants to know the source of that list. So I need to type in a source. And what I'm going to do is use this shortcut key here to pull the data directly from Excel. So I could type it in here, but instead I'm going to use this feature here. And I want it to pull from this list. And we'll see that that cells H2 through H13. The input message, we can change that. And if we wanted to change that, we could type something in, such as choose a value. An error alert, we can change that to choose from the list, and we can hit OK. And what happens now is we are given a list of possible options, right? So rather than let the user type in one of these values, maybe it's better if we give them the list of options, so that way they won't enter any incorrect data. And we'll see that as we choose a new value, the salary will update.